And welcome to our board meeting this Monday night, February 10th at 7 o'clock, and I will call us to order. And we will start with roll call first. Stacy? Here. Travis?
Here.
Matt?
Here.
Ashley?
Here.
Larry?
Here.
Thank you. Was the meeting properly noticed?
The meeting was properly noticed.
And can you get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, so I'm very excited tonight. We have a spotlight on learning, and we have Horizon Elementary here. So I'm going to let Christy and Lexi come forward and just introduce us to everyone and get started.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us. I'm Christy Johnson, principal over at Horizon, and I have a great group here with me tonight to talk about Playground Pals. So with me, I have Lexi Horvat, our school psychologist, Nellie Bailey, fourth grade teacher, Carly Getsky, and three of our awesome Horizon students, all fourth graders. So we have Nora Terrio. Nora, can you give a wave? Elin Vetterkind, there's Elin, and Derek Waltz. So they are all we're going to kind of share the slides here and take turns giving you some information about what Playground Pals is and what we're doing with it over at Horizon.
You can go to the next slide. Thank you. Oh, how about me?
I tried with my brain just to move
It
it.
didn't work. All right, sorry about that, you guys. So whose idea was this? Well, Playground Pals was brought to our attention by Derek and Kathy Walls. They really brought the concept forward to the Horizon leadership team back already in June in the summertime and wanted to get our thoughts about possibly trying something like this at our school. We loved the idea, so we thought, okay, who do we reach out to? Where do we begin? How do we put this idea into action? So ultimately, we thought about our student council. We already have our student council in place at Horizon, and they're a great group of kids who are already known for being leaders in our building. So you're going to hear from some of them tonight, and hopefully you learn more about this great initiative.
Okay, so what is Playground Pals? So Playground Pals is a program here's out at recess time and just modeling again what it looks like to follow the expectations and be a Horizon student.
All right, so I'm one of the student council leaders at Horizon. My name is Mrs. Getsky, and I brought two lovely ladies here from student council to kind of talk more about it. So girls, why do we need Playground Pals at Horizon?
I think we need Playground Pals at Horizon because it includes others who might not have something to do or play with at recess. What do you think, Nora?
I think it makes a good environment for recess and gives student council an opportunity to teach others new games.
All right, who will run Playground Pals?
We do, the members of student council.
This includes 27 members, one per class. Each student from student council will wear a red vest for other students to easily spot us and ask if they need a game or someone to play with.
So student council had to fill out an application and kind of go through that process and lead some leadership opportunities on there, and then one per class were picked based on teacher references and references that they put on the application. So student council will meet each month to talk about Playground Pals and kind of check in. Last month we started briefly kind of coming up with some ideas for non-competitive games. Here are a few examples.
Red light, green light,
I Spy,
jump rope,
and chalk.
Student council will also talk about some active inclusion strategies at each month's meeting and just kind of do a check-in. These include
Directly inviting others to join.
sharing equipment with others, and taking turns.
Asking others what they would like to do.
Some some additional tasks that student council will do is keeping a calming space organized, and that's something that I think Derek's going to talk about in a little bit. Being responsible for their assigned vests and just helping student council brainstorm some more ideas to include at recess.
So putting a calming station in place on the playground is important in my opinion, because kids that are playing competitive games can get angry or can think that they shouldn't be in that group. So we're thinking of putting a calming space that has visibility still for the supervisors, but doesn't show that much visibility that other kids can watch and get other students more aggravated. And they can put fidgets, like I Spies, like a lot of things to help calm you down in there, to calm you down so that when you're ready you can go back out and have more fun.
And just to add on to that, Derek and his mom, Kathy, who's a teacher at Pewaukee High School, have been working really hard on raising some funds to get that calming space built for us. So you can see the model there, and they've been working with John Stangler to figure out a space on our playground with the hopes that possibly this summer we'll have that getting up and running so that by next year we'll have this awesome calming space with some great tools in it for students who might benefit from that during their recess time. So some big next steps for us in terms of Playground Pals. Carly is working to purchase those vests for student council members to make sure that they're easy to identify. The student council is going to be inviting some high school mentors through Kathy to possibly come over and teach some additional non-competitive games that they may come up with. And then through Carly and her teaching partner, Haley Splan, they're going to do some training for our student council members with the hopes of rolling out Playground Pals fully by March time. So we're still in process, in the works with this, but really hoping to get it up and running by March. What questions do you have for us?
I wanted to know, since you've started this, how long has it been in place?
So it will really only start in March. So
Okay.
it's something that we've been working on kind of behind the scenes, getting all the pieces. Will be rolled out in March.
Okay. When you put this together, was the intention, I'm sure it was, to kind of help with, not that you have a ton of bullying at Horizon, but maybe any of that activity that was a little upper-handed, or shy kids that it was just hard for them to engage. Is that kind of why we're doing this, in hopes that we can help in those situations?
Yeah, so this idea really was Derek and his mom Kathy's, and they came to us with this a whole presentation that they had put together, talking to us about how not all kids enjoy playing really highly competitive games on the playground. And for some kids, those highly competitive games can turn into arguing and different things like that. And how sometimes kids don't feel like they have a spot where they really necessarily belong on the playground. So in an effort to really make sure that everyone felt that sense of belonging on the playground, Playground Pals was kind of invented, and the idea was come up with. And then we've done a lot of work in the background between myself, Lexi, and Nellie, along with our classroom teachers, and then folding in Kathy and Derek to try to help work out all of the details. And we're really excited to get this up and running.
Any other questions?
So is Playground Pals, is that I don't know, whatever, a broader base, or is it something just, a Pewaukee developed or created, or?
Yeah, so there was an original idea, and I think, Derek, was it out of like England or something like that you saw it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there was an, yeah, so out of England that they had found, but the program was much more involved, and you kind of had to pay a fee and do some different things to be involved with that. So we took and kind of made it our own, something that would be manageable for us to implement, and something that we thought would still be really beneficial for our students.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Derek, thank you for bringing it to the school, and girls, thank you for participating in building it. We appreciate that.
And do you three know what one of the biggest fears of adults is? Public speaking. And you guys did an awesome job just coming up here in front of this group, being very prepared, very articulate, super easy to understand, poised in front of the group. So I want to congratulate you guys on your public speaking, and thank you for trying to help do your part to make Horizon a kinder place and a more comfortable place for all kids. I think it's super positive, and what a great example and leadership on your part.
Listen, and Kathy might be able to answer this question. Horizon also has one of the signboards too, right? Okay.
Yeah, so, and the intent is there will be one of these at Horizon and also one. I tried to let this be my kids' thing. So the intent is the company that we found that will finance these outdoor huts or the outdoor calming spaces. They will finance one for the Horizon Playground and also one for the PLE Playground. So there is continuity, and we did take that into consideration. But Horizon's the one that really has done an amazing job putting together the programming and really supporting not just like the physical structure, but also I guess, like the content that goes behind it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. Thank you, students.
Thank
Good
you
job.
for being here. Great
Thank
job.
you. All right, next I'm going to call on Natalie and Anna to give us your student board representative report.
All right, well, that public speaking is going to be a hard one to follow, but we'll try. So this is our February board report. We're just going to highlight a couple of things. The first thing that we wanted to highlight was an awesome initiative at PHS called Lit Crew. I'm sure you've heard of it. I don't know if Mr. Zindler has done a presentation on it before, but I thought I'd give a little student perspective as well. So what is Lit Crew? It's a group of upperclassmen that supports ACMS and PHS students in the areas of reading and writing. And it began in 2013-2014, the school year, with just PHS students being involved. And then in 2021 and 2022, it included ASA. And it was created by Mr. David Zindler, who was a former English teacher and now is a literacy coach here at the high school and throughout the district. And there are currently 16 Lit Crew members this semester, who are all seniors, but there have been juniors in the past as well. And they're students with high academic leadership and who also have a volunteer period during their semester. And Mr. Zindler wanted to highlight that we've helped over 3,000 students during its entire existence. So we really get to go and be in the classrooms and support students that may need just a little extra help with literacy skills and things like that. The second thing I wanted to highlight was a big love from my little sister who went on this 4th grade field trip to Madison. This has been a long-standing tradition. I remember going to Madison when I was in 4th grade, so she just wanted to highlight a couple of her favorite things from the trip. The field trip was to apply learnings that 4th graders are going through in social studies right now with the 3 branches of government. And then they also learned a lot about Madison history and the original Capitol building. So on the Madison trip, they got a guided tour of the current Capitol building and got exclusive access to all the cool rooms in there. My little sister's, one of her favorite parts was learning about Old Abe in one of the rooms over there. She thought it was super cool. And then they also got to eat lunch in the Capitol as well. So just an awesome field trip. It's continuing. It certainly had a lasting impact on myself and all the students that go on that.
So I wanted to highlight the AP Art and Design exhibition students. So the students spent some time researching artist techniques and media that they had previously seen in class, but just specifically techniques and works that they had been a little bit more interested in putting into their own art. And they created basically this mural of their art. It's down by the auditorium atrium. Each art piece had different inspirations and meanings. Students who are planning to go to college for art were able to kind of focus on more of their career in the future and what they're looking to focus specifically on technique-wise. Other students created pieces with personal connections, ties to memories, and stories. The viewing will be up from January 14th to February 24th, and the students with featured art includes Reina Bueno-Welch, Elle Klubertons, Livia Truong, Sophia Schwenke, Maya Cornelius, Jalen Gilstrom, Caleb Smith, Cecilia Scott, and Paisley Narlock. And then I also wanted to highlight PHS Serving Others, the Insight course. They did Valentine's for Veterans on January 28th. They went to 5 different third grade classrooms, and the cards are going to go to Milwaukee Veterans Affairs Medical Center. This was just a really great activity to kind of connect with these students, but also to do something that has a bigger purpose and a little bit more meaningful inspiration behind it. For athletics and activities, the PHS varsity dance team is state-bound. I believe they went last weekend. They are going for D2 hip hop and Autumn Flagstad to D4 All-State Finals. For Science Olympiad, they took 7th place out of 17 teams at UWM Regional. That includes Max Smith, Landon Pungercher, Jagger Calvin, Elizabeth Dornfeld, Logan M., Texas Mackey, Moz Tureen, and John Roth, and they all took first place in their events. And then this Friday, there's going to be a Hope Squad event at the girls' basketball game, which is the Let's Talk About Mental Health event. Basically, we're just going to have a lot of brochures. We have shirts. We have all of that, just highlighting like what mental health is and the importance of the discussion around it is. For wrestling at the Terry Kramer Open, the varsity results included Caleb Cady at first, Brody Cease at third, Bobby Edwards at fourth, Henry Gashler at fifth, Tommy Yeager at sixth. And for basketball, girls' team record is 14-2. The boys' team record is 9-4. And then also this weekend, I had the opportunity to go to a Model UN group conference in Chicago. It was really fun. It was February 6th through 9th. It was the 37th annual Munich conference. So it was through the University.
That's still at the Palmer Hotel?
Huh?
Is it still at the Palmer Hotel?
No, it's at the Hyatt Regency.
Okay.
I think a couple of years ago they ended up switching it because we kind of outgrew it because there's so many people going now. Yeah.
And then just some salutes and recognitions. So we wanted to highlight Anna Tarian for her 1,000 career points and for being nominated with Sports Athlete of the Week. All the FBLA state qualifiers and all FBLA members for a great run at regionals. All the PHS students that auditioned for the WI State Honors Bands and choirs, And then on Wednesday, February 5th, 2 students actually signed letters of intent to play college sports. I didn't get to fix that. But Rachel Foreman for lacrosse and Caleb Cady for wrestling, they signed those. Ooh, I'm talking. Sorry about that. And then as well, all those people who are showing their art, Al Klubertans, Rihanna Heck, and Evelyn Aldana for competing in state for art this coming March. So those are just some salutes and recognitions, and we'll take any questions or comments if you have them. Sorry about the slides there.
Those PHS students that auditioned for the honors band, when will they know? Do you know?
I'm not actually sure. I can definitely figure that out and let you know. I do know so many people auditioned. I couldn't fit all their names on there. There was a big list, but I'll for sure let you know. I'll look into that.
That's great. Also, I love the Valentine's for Veterans. I think that is such a sweet project to do. Is someone going to hand deliver them to the Veterans Club? Or?
I think so. When I talked to my friend about it, she told me a little bit how Mrs. Buddy has like a connection to the program that it's going through. So I'm assuming that Mrs. Buddy might like just drop them off, but I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, very neat. Love it. Anybody else have questions?
Great report. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Salutes and recognitions from the board. Does anybody have anything they want to mention tonight?
Over the weekend, actually it came up on Friday, at the boys basketball game on Friday, there was a brief demo of wheelchair basketball, and the lady that was in charge of it said you ought to come back on Saturday because they said they had 27 different teams, wheelchair basketball, and which I did. And so they had all 3 courts in the main gym with activities going on. And I guess looks like they started at 8 o'clock in the morning and they went till 8 o'clock at night. And then they also had sessions on Sunday, and then also the auxiliary gym. So it was kind of like a packed, busy day here and lots of things going on. And there was one of the students working the desk or the entry area by the main gym. She was a student here in Pewaukee. There were 3 students from Wauwatosa East and then a couple students from Brookfield that were volunteering time here through either their Key Club or different different groups from their schools. But it was amazing in terms of how much activity was going on here on a Saturday to support that. So I believe that Mike Cady was involved in it, Jeff Behrens, and other people that supported it. I mean, from the housekeeping or custodial staff in terms of, is it Randy? Is that his name? Or Randy? Yeah, he was here. And just a number of people were involved in it. So it was a great way to showcase our school and school district. And I think they really liked it here. And when I talked to Jeff Behrens and Nikki Sandvik this morning, they've already asked if they can come back next year. So they liked it here a lot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it was great to have them here on campus. And for much of last week, they had brought wheelchairs for our Phi Ed classes to try all that out, and some of the players were here working with our kids, so it was great to see our students giving that a try. And some of our star basketball players seeing what it's like to try to play it from a wheelchair against people who really know what they're doing, I think I think they would probably say it's a little humbling, so.
yes. And this is more anecdotal in terms of, so one of the people that was here on Friday night, he was a part of the team that went to the Paralympics in Paris after the regular Olympics, and he had his gold medal with him, and it was like he took it out, showed it to me, and said, "You got to hold this thing." And this is as close as I'm going to ever get to a gold medal, but it was very impressive in terms of the team and the work that was there, so.
Any salutes from admin?
Go ahead, Anthony, if you have some.
Yeah, I have a couple. So February is, March is National CTE Month, so coming up this next month. CISA 1, which is one of 12 cooperative educational service agencies in the state of Wisconsin, highlighted 4 teachers for the upcoming month. Nelson Brownell was one of 4 educators recognized by CISA, so a great recognition for him and I think a testament to our Tech Ed program. Secondly, beginning of February 3rd through 7th was National School Counseling Week, so I want to recognize Laura Howard, Kelsey Jansen, Allison Prather, Brianna Rembert, Angie Lewick, Amanda Sorkness, and Katie Williams. Those are all of our school counselors across the district, so taking some time to recognize them for the important work that they do.
Awesome. Thank you.
I would add Ellie Molini and Michelle Davison, who are our Hope Squad advisors. You mentioned the event we have on Friday. That program is really thriving under their leadership, so they put a lot of time and energy into that group. So if you have a chance to turn up for the basketball game and maybe support their efforts on Friday night, that would be great. But salute Allie and Michelle.
All right. If there's nothing else, Tammy, I will ask, are there any citizen comments?
I've received no citizen comments.
All right, thank you. Next, consent agenda, which includes accepting the minutes from the previous meetings, correspondence that was included in your packet, and we had some really wonderful gifts. We got 3 gifts that were donated to the Pewaukee High School Robotics. $2,500 from Jerry's Automotive Service. Buzu Enterprises gave $1,000, and Dedicated Computing gave $2,500. Thank you so much to these 3 organizations that so generously gave to help our robotics team just thrive. So thank you very much. So unless there are any questions, I'll take a motion on the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, Business Affairs Committee. Stacy?
Yep, so we had our date on the human resources hiring season, which kind of unofficially starts on February 1st, which is the retiree timeline when they ask our staff to announce those, and none have announced. So right now, we're not looking at any retirees. We do have one resignation. Sean Upton, a business teacher here in the high school, is going to complete his contract and then not renew. So Colin is very excited to see these low numbers at this point. Last year, we had 18 vacancies and 926 applicants. So it's about 51 applicants per vacancy, which is a impressive number. And he did suggest that we discuss increasing the liquidating damages for teachers that break their contracts in our policy. He said we're falling a little bit behind other districts, so that is something we may want to get onto the policy agenda. Moving on to our finances, our revenues are at 26.5% of budget. Our expenses are at 45.5%. The next and final state installment will come in on Monday, a week from today, for our revenues. So then we will be sitting at nearly 100%. And then the only thing I wanted to point out was the health insurance. And John, I have such bad handwriting on my own note. Our loss ratio was what? Was it?
Currently, the loss ratio through first 6 months of the year is running about 89%. So the plan is performing as we had designed it or anticipated it would last year when we made changes.
And it's about 30% lower than what we experienced last year?
Projected cost increase would have been about 30% going into this year.
Okay, and then you want to talk about the budget development progress?
Sure. So we built the context around the Business Affairs Committee and the budget development process. Next week, we'll hear the governor's budget, particularly the education budget that will be released. And wanted to be able to have the committee have a little background on what some of those items are that potentially could be in the budget and what the impact would be for the school district. So we looked at some things that impact the revenue limit, like the per pupil increase. We looked at the low revenue ceiling and the impact that that has, as that was a major change last biennium in the budget. We looked at the state equalization aid and the pot of resources that is available through that, and also the relationship in funding to the school levy credits. Just to build the understanding from the Business Affairs Committee of some of the terminology that we'll be hearing moving forward, and then what that impact is on Pewaukee School District in our planning. So more to come.
Awesome. Any questions for John? We've got the Human Resources Hiring Season Perspective Report.
That was the first report that Colin had presented.
Yeah, that's what I talked about.
Okay,
So
so
there's
nothing more we
not a whole
wanted.
lot going on, which is kind of nice.
Yeah,
Basically,
okay.
is the report at this point.
All right. So can I get a motion to accept the Business Affairs Report?
Motion to accept the Business Affairs Report as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to new business, we have a field trip consideration. It's a field trip to Puerto Rico, and I'm gonna ask Amy to come up and speak to us about this opportunity.
Abby.
Sorry.
Hello, Abby.
Hi. My voice decided to leave me today. I'm Abby Varela. I'm a Spanish teacher here. I've been here for 12 years. I've been taking students on trips for the last 10. And this is the first time I'm actually proposing a domestic trip because we're going to Puerto Rico, or we are hoping to go to Puerto Rico with your approval. So I'm seeking approval on a 7-day trip to Puerto Rico in June of 2026. Why? Because it would just give students a great opportunity to learn, immerse themselves in language and culture without actually leaving the country, making it a little bit more attainable for people who don't have passports or do not want to leave the country. And we think it'd be really fun. Actually, the students are the ones who decided on Puerto Rico. We sent out a survey. We had overwhelming majority voted for Puerto Rico. So we said, sure, why not? But because of the location, I'm actually switching tour companies this year. The company I usually travel with just didn't have a great Puerto Rico itinerary. So we are going with EF, Education First. The district is pretty familiar with EF. That's where Emily goes to London. Kate Mitchell also uses EF for her trips as well. So that is a change for me. The total cost of the trip for 7 days is $32.75. Families, if they enroll by the deadline, which will be February 21st, also get 50%, or 50%. Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't that be great? Sign me up.
$50 off of their initial enrollment, so that lowers it just a little. All meals are included, all activities are included, all gratuities are included. So it's in this day and age with traveling, it's actually a pretty good deal for students for 7 days. So yeah, that's kind of it. Does anyone have any questions about the trip proposal?
So what choices did they have in terms of other than Puerto Rico? And was there any indication why Puerto Rico was popular? But
We gave them 5 choices for this vote. I didn't want to open it up to all the countries, so we listed Puerto Rico, Mexico, Spain, Guatemala, and Peru. My vote would have been Peru. That was the least voted for country by the students. And honestly, I don't really know what their motivation was. I think perhaps it being domestic may have been a factor. I don't really know.
It's in the Caribbean.
It's in the Caribbean. There was some beach on the itinerary. It's not all beach. It's actually a very cultural itinerary. They get to do some tours of downtown San Juan, Capitol buildings, monuments, all things that, don't seem like American culture, but because Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States, it actually is. So it'll be interesting. It'll be cool. But yeah, that was the overwhelming majority. Second was kind of tied between Spain and Mexico.
what number of students do you expect to go?
So we have initially 31 families that have indicated interest. I don't know how that will pan out. Usually when we plan trips, I get a ton of interest and then 15 sign up or 11 sign up. We've had as many as 24 and as few as 11. So I don't know, we'll see. But 31 have signed the interest.
Did you have a trip planned this year too, or last year?
What was that?
Did you have a trip last year or this year?
Yeah, we went to Costa Rica in this past June, 2024.
So I was going to guess it was going to be Costa Rica, but if you went there, probably.
We didn't give that as an option because we had just come back. Okay. And I do have students that went to Puerto Rico, that went to Costa Rica that are on my list for Puerto Rico. So that's kind of why we try not to go the same place 2 years in a row, 2 trips in a row.
All right.
Move to approve the field trip a trip to Puerto Rico, whatever the dates are on that one.
June 2026.
Yep, okay. Travel to Puerto Rico in 2026.
Yep.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Abby. Your voice held up pretty good.
Yeah, it came out of nowhere. Board meeting.
All right, next we have our discipline and attendance report, and we have all of our associate principals here, if you want to come up.
Yeah, as they're making their way down to the microphone, I'll just kind of set the table a little bit. So this relates to one of the board goals that were established regarding to information and data. And so I asked this fine group to put together a report on our discipline and attendance. And, the thought is that this would be an annual regular report to the board if that's what the board would like to see. So, Emily, are you leadoff hitter tonight?
I am the leadoff hitter tonight. So I will be the last one actually going for the whole presentation, but we just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page about some of the definitions. specifically about attendance, since there was the request for that information. So the first thing that some of us are going to talk about will be our attendance rate, and that's the number of students who are present each day for each school day, when that's how the average is created. We wanted to make sure that we explain the difference between excused absences and unexcused absences. So an excused absence is when we receive, as the attendance officers, that is what I'm referring to as we, receive an acceptable reason for absences, which are listed in the school board policy that I have, that we typed up there, as well as that, sorry, I have bad eyesight, which is why I keep looking over there and not looking up there. Per the state of Wisconsin, students are allowed to have 5 excused absences per semester. The unexcused absences are when the attendance is not in alignment with the policy, or when they have hit that number of more than 5 per semester, or realistically it's about 10 per school year is when we switch it over to unexcused absences. Chronically absent, I went off of the number for the county versus the school board, versus the school districts. I just got done serving on the Waukesha Truancy Task Force, which is what they determined is if a student is present for less than 90% of the school year, they are considered chronically absent. Truancy cases, that would be when Michelle Davison gets involved and we file with the county. A truancy ticket, that's a lot heavy more in the secondary versus elementary. That's when we see a pattern where we are not hearing from a parent or guardian, lots of unexcused absences in a row, and or it's also a consequence if a student misses a Saturday detention. That's listed in our handbook. And then finally, tardies, we went ahead and we just listed out what the difference is. For the elementary and ASA, it states if they are just late to school. The high school is different. An absence is considered if they are more than it's a tardy up to 15 minutes late, and then after 15 minutes late, it turns into an absence for that class period. For the attendance tiers, as I talked about those excused absences and unexcused absences, this is from our MTSS handbook. This is in all of our school handbooks as well, what those different tiers are. This is across the district. This is not just high school. This is PLE, this is Horizon, of what we consider for those tiers and what we put in for those interventions. And with that, I turn it over to PLE.
Hello.
Beth.
So I'm Beth Ingersoll, the Associate Principal at PLE. I take care of attendance, and I share the responsibility of discipline with Brian Siegel. There, just so a little bit of information, there's 752 kids currently enrolled at PLE, ages 4 to 8. So when we're looking at attendance, you can see the attendance has been relatively consistent across the school year. January has hit us hard with illness. It is probably it's the worst January in my 3 years here, and February is trending in the same way. I put a little note at the bottom that we had 638 illness-related absences from January 2nd to the 27th, roughly 40 kids out per day. So if you think about that, in comparison to 752 kids, we're looking almost an absence a day for a child. The second round of all those joyous illnesses are hitting us hard in February, and we're just continuing to see kids out ill. We are promoting parents keeping kids home for a day or two extra to try and lessen the spread of some of the things that are just moving their way throughout PLE. When we look at attendance in comparison to the year, we can see that this has been our best year so far at that point. We'll probably level back out. We continue to kind of partner with our families in supporting attendance. A lot of the pieces within attendance at PLE is first-time families who are just unaware of the attendance rules put in place in regards to the state. We also have 4K, which is not a required grade level, but that attendance, those attendance numbers do impact our overall percentage, but we try to work very closely with our 4K families too to make them aware of the impact of attendance on overall academic, social pieces for kids, but also how when they move into 5K, the way that is accounted and can impact their attendance in kindergarten. When we're looking at attendance overall this school year so far, the majority of our absences again are due to illness or parent decision. We also have several students who receive outside therapies where they may be on a schedule where they are attending those therapies outside of the school for partial days or full days. Those different attendance contracts do impact our overall percentage of attendance. As far as unexcused, we're working with 4 families in the building who have received attendance letter communication regarding their students being unexcused. In that regard, we're talking about 3+ unexcused absences within a period of time. That starts out with communication from me, reaching out via email, and then it moves into phone calls and other communication, parent meetings as that continues. I don't have a lot of unexcused. Parents have been really good this year about communicating where their kids are and why they're absent. Habitual truancy, I have 0 filed this school year. I had 1 last year. I have 1 that I'm monitoring very closely this year. After some meetings with family, we've been able to see a complete turnaround in that child's attendance, and we have been seeing great things, so we're excited about that. 5 families received attendance letter communication regarding their student being tardy to school. Again, tardy is any student that's arriving post 8:40. There's a little bit of wiggle room in regards to the attendance as far as tardies go, because some of our kids are just really pokey because they're little, their little feet just don't move quite so fast. So there's a little bit of grace within that. We look really closely at signed in, like students that are being signed in by parents. And then again, that's communication from me, usually via email or phone call when it starts to be a problem. Sometimes if it's students who are moving pokey, it's a conversation with the child regarding you've got to move a little bit quicker and get from point A to point B. Discipline stuff. Again, at PLE, we don't see a ton of discipline. One thing we're really proud, though, is when we look at this graph up here, you can see the decrease in behavior from 22, 23, and then as it goes on. In that 22, 23 year, which is in kind of that teal blue, that is the first year that I started within PLE, and we started talking about finding a consistent programming in order to support behavior within our school. 23, 24 is the first year teachers really started implementing that, and then 24, 25, we've seen really phenomenal results in supporting our students within the behavior and the approach that we've taken. We've gone to progressive discipline, which is essentially PLE is a teaching institution. Our kids are 4 years old to 8 years old. We're teaching them executive functioning. We're teaching them how to be good humans, what it takes to manage themselves, be aware of themselves, and the choices that they make and how that impacts others. The language that the teachers have been working through comes from social thinking, explaining to students how behaviors and choices they make impact people around them, and some of the accountability pieces that we put into those situations. Each child is seen as their own. So we don't necessarily take one cookie cutter situation and have a cookie cutter response. We look at the trends in the student. Is this a new behavior? Is this a behavior that's stemming from other areas? Is this multiple behaviors over a short span of time, long span of time? And then we kind of go through that from that point in a direction that helps teach the student so we don't see the recurrence in behavior. And that's why you can kind of see as the numbers, as the year goes on, in the beginning of the year, we do a lot more teaching of behaviors. As the year progresses, we see less reoccurrence because of the work that we're doing with our kids specifically. You can see this school year, we're looking at 24 total infractions, 16 minors, 8 majors. Not a lot of big things happening. PLE is a lot about, we look at the difference between intent and reaction or impulsivity. Our students are young. A lot of the choices that they make are impulsive or reactionary. Our students don't typically come with an intent to cause harm or an intent to hurt others. And so that's another part of that piece when we are looking at what was the cause at the beginning. Was this a group, a misunderstanding, a miscommunication? Oftentimes when we work our way backwards from what the behavior was to what started it, we get a lot of really good information, and that's where we can take that teaching lens and support the student through their choice that they made, hold them accountable for the choice, and then move forward in hoping that we don't see that behavior again. To kind of break it down, dishonesty is a thing that we work with a lot. Students just being honest and upfront about the choices they make. Physical contact or aggression, property misuse, technology, infractions with our second grade students who are their first experience of having their own device, disruption, defiance, or disrespect. When we're talking about majors, again, we're talking about disruption. It's usually repetitive then at that point. It's a trend that we've seen from other prior behaviors within that child's day or school year. And then physical contact, again, that is one that we're seeing more intent behind the choice that they made. Suspensions, we don't do that very often. It's pretty rare at PLE. This school year we have 2 in school and 0 out of school. So again, the interventions that we're doing, we try to break it apart: student focus, staff focus, family focus, things that are focused specifically on our kids. So PD's Pals is a program that we use with Mr. Deuce. It involves daily check-in, check-out. He works directly with students that we have recognized that there is maybe a CASEL competency that they are working on. So he has worked directly with that teacher, that student, and their family to put a plan together that supports what that student's focus is and growth, and then celebrates the wins and works through the misses. Daily check-in sheets, again, those are focused on the student, but they also are monitored, and we record that information and watch for any trend or change. It also goes home to families. Reflection forms, those are often done with myself or Mr. Siegel. We work directly with the child to talk through what was the action that they did, what was the reasoning behind it, so we can work through to figure out how next time something like that pops up, what we're going to do instead. Student groups, this is often with Laura Howard, Mr. Siegel, myself, or Mr. Deuce. We bring kids together that we may recognize just have a commonality between the choices that they're making, and we work together with peer models as well to kind of support and kind of put together groups of kids that can help work through different things. So if there's difficulty with sharing, difficulty with competitive play, we bring these kids together, we have conversations peer to peer. They do a lot of that work themselves, talking through things, and it's really interesting to listen to them share their thoughts and reflections on some of the choices and things that they're doing. And they do learn a lot quicker when they're working with a student their own age than just hearing us kind of drone on at them. Social thinking, visuals, lessons, language, again, this is all stuff that we're doing within PLE. You'll hear Mr. Siegel and I talk a lot about expected versus unexpected. Which is essentially like an example would be it's expected to be running outside on the playground. It is unexpected to be running through our hallways. We bring those connections so that kids have an understanding of what we're talking about. If we just say to them, stop doing that, they're not learning anything from that. We haven't taught them why. Instead, we're bringing them, because a lot of times it is okay to be running outside, but it's not okay to run in our classrooms or in our hallways. Weekly guidance class with Laura Howard. She works through the Second Step program, which also helps support the lessons that we're doing that Mr. Deuce also does, as well as the consistent language throughout the building. PLE Notify, Recess Notify, that's how our staff are able to talk to us about things that they're handling within the building, as well as letting us know when we need to step in. Behavior plans are often put together for students if we see consistent trends and we're not learning from the actions that have occurred prior. Phone calls home from staff as far as teachers calling home, or myself or Mr. Siegel, Mr. Deuce. Social thinking, again, teachers are very focused on that. They use it in the classroom, they use it within our hallways, within our cafeteria, our playground. The kids are inundated with that language. Family focus, we do a lot of parent meetings, communication log, phone calls, emails, and then we have a section in our family newsletter about student wellness that is either written by Mr. Deuce, Mr. Howard, myself, or Mr. Siegel that really focuses on something that we're working on or a topic that's within guidance or Mr. Deuce's lessons with kids. Successes, one thing that's been really successful for us the past 2 years is that we've partnered with Right Way to do bus shout-outs. Bus behavior was a huge problem for us when I first started. We've seen a significant drop in our bus behavior situations since implementing this at PLE. We work with Right Way. That form that's in the black section there, bus drivers fill that out specifically about kids and the choices that they're making that are a positive impact. The kids, once they start doing that, the kids want to get that shout out, so they start to make those same choices. Bus drivers have been really great about doing that. We put those into our announcements. Student shout outs, our staff have a weekly email with a Google form where they can shout out for kids that are just making great choices, whether it's behaviorally, just working hard in school, being a good friend, kindness. And then Positive Pair of the Week, that again is nominated by just our staff members, finding kids that are making great choices. They get to be on the announcements with Mr. Siegel on Fridays. Lunch Bunch is another opportunity where the kids get to just celebrate the great choices that they're making by having lunch with Mr. Siegel and I. And then Caught Being Awesome is just another part of our daily announcements. So every day those kid shout outs, they change. Every day the Caught Being Awesome changes. those are in announcements every day for teachers to celebrate our kids, share the good things that are happening. And then the bus shout out, again, is something that we hope to get a new one every day. Sometimes we go on a little drought, but usually we are able to update those as well. So that's kind of PLE in a nutshell as far as discipline and behavior and attendance. So any questions for PLE?
Beth, when you talk about in-school suspension, can you speak to what that looks like?
In-school suspension, essentially at PLE, it really is them having a normal school day outside of their classroom. So Mr. Deuce, myself, Mr. Siegel, we set up a calendar amongst the three of us to make sure that the student is supervised at all times. They often sit at in our offices at one of the tables, and we get all of their daily work from the teachers and on-course staff, and we work them through their day. It's not an opportunity to play. Sometimes our offices can look a little fun. It's not that we make it unfun, but it's not as engaging as getting an opportunity to be with peers. It's not just a free time. So they are working through a daily school day just in the setting of our school office.
Beth, my first comment is a bit lighthearted. I think I have some adults that I'd like to steal that reflection form for, so if you could send me that, I would appreciate it. My other question, though, is regarding the tardies. I talked to Mike a little bit today. Could you speak to if any of those families are open enrolled or if it trends one way or the other?
Honestly, right now, if I were to name a trend, our residential students have more tardies than our open enrollment. Okay. I do work with a handful of families who are open enrolled with being late to school. Some of them have outside circumstances that I can't really get into, but that do impact that, and we work with those families. We try to be heavy on the communication end with them, letting them know within our letters. Julie Bowden helps me put letters together for these families, and we are upfront about the impact it can have on their open enrollment status within those letters, making sure they are aware that attendance is a piece that is considered in their continuation of open enrollment status. So yeah, the trend in our building tends to be more of residential families than open enrolled.
Okay, thank you. And my other question I didn't raise today, and I apologize, so I'm throwing something new at you. When we look at the incidents, the disciplinary infractions, so if I take first grade, for example, you had 10 minors and 3 majors. I'm assuming that probably wasn't 13 different children. I'm guessing there's some repetitive behaviors in certain students.
Yeah, I mean, we do see we will see repetitive behaviors among kids in all grades. Only having 13 discipline acts out of a grade level of close to 200 kids. Of course it does, you can only spread it out, you can spread it out pretty far. I can't really speak to because the number gets really small really quickly, but it's not just one student. There are multiple within that grade level that we work with. But sometimes we do see students who have more than one.
Thank you.
Beth, going back to those incidences, the 8 majors, which is disruption or physical contact, students, is that students having physical contact with another student, with a teacher, with a para? And when you look at those incidences this year, do you feel like there's a change from years prior in how those are playing out?
A change in regard to an increase or?
Increase or the nature of those majors?
Yes and no. Our majors in regards to the students, if I think about the physical contact one, some of it is physical contact that is repetitive. So it may be a student who's had multiple minor level physical contacts, which there hasn't necessarily been intent to harm, but we're not seeing a change for the positive in the behavior. It continues to repeat. And when we get to a point with a student, we put that into the major category, and then we change our approach in regards to behavior plans. Some of those student groups that I talked to in the other interventions, whether it's parent coming in, having full meetings with our team to kind of discuss what we can do to fix that, and what we can do to partner with them in order to get that student support. Sometimes the majors do involve students, sometimes they do involve staff. But often, again, looking at our population of kids, the intent to truly hurt someone isn't necessarily there. So they're not coming to school planning on that. The majority of the majors that we encounter are when students are at a truly dysregulated state, where they are not thinking squarely, and their actions then result in someone, unfortunately being made contact with, that aggressive behavior. I don't know if that answers your full question.
It does, thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
Okay, thank you, Beth.
Hi, everyone. Lexi Horvat, Associate Principal at Horizon. Here tonight to talk to you about our attendance and discipline, and hope to answer all of your questions the best I can with being new this year. So I partner, attendance and discipline is something that I take on within my role, but really partner with Christy Johnson as well, just both being new to the building and then really leaning in on my AP team as well. So this is what our monthly attendance has looked like. So as you can see, similar to Beth's, small dip in our attendance, September 97.51%, and January down to 93.51%. Similar, we're seeing a lot of illnesses right now, and illnesses that are spanning almost a week or more. So definitely same messaging going out to our families and really trying to work with them and partner with them. And just proactively support them during that time. We know this is, just a hard season with all the illnesses our kids are experiencing. So that's definitely a little bit due to that dip of in attendance. As you can see, though, if you're looking at each year, our attendance has improved from years prior. So that is definitely a glow and something to celebrate. So attendance, this is where we're currently sitting. Again, excused attendance, we're seeing just the majority of those due to illnesses, some parent choice, but also seeing some just extended family vacations as well. So again, trying to be as proactive as possible, communicating with families on the front end, letting them know, like, hey, you're sitting at about 5 days. We know you have this trip coming up that you've communicated with the front office. After this trip, this is where you're going to be sitting at. So just making families aware of where they are and communicating with them. Unexcused, we have 3 families that we are currently working with and supporting. And just, again, unexcused means that they've hit over those 10 excused absences, and working with them to just get their student to school, working with Nellie, our school psych, and just our student services team in order to best support them. 0 truancy has been filed for any family this year. And tardies, we have 6 families that have received attendance letters regarding their student being tardy. To answer your question as well, not seeing any specific trend. They're both students who are in the district and students who are open enrolled. So moving on to discipline, again, you can kind of see from years prior, we've definitely made some gains in our work. I think some big things are just, again, our staff members being proactive on the front end and teaching around expected behaviors at Horizon. Another big glow for us at Horizon is getting an SEL curriculum. So as you know, we talked about getting purposeful people and really embedding that into our Tier 1 instruction. We've seen some great things with that as well. So in September, we had 16 discipline infractions, October 18, November 10, December 20. We saw an uptick, which is not uncommon either around the holidays. It's common to see some students who have displayed some more behaviors, especially just because that time of the year can be challenging and difficult for students who are experiencing some trauma. Just in addition to that, schedules are different during that time of the year, so that can always be challenging as well. And then in the month of January, 14. So again, to talk about just the difference between minor and major. So minor are just brief, low intensity, usually handled by our classroom teacher, but always in partnership and communication with our parents. And our teachers do an amazing job of always bringing us into the loop, as well as administrators, and communicating to our student support staff as well. These incidences are still documented in Skyward, even though it might just be a one-off thing. We do ask our teachers to document that just to have a paper trail. Majors are going to be severe, more high intensity, or they're going to be repeat of those minor infractions, usually always handled by an administrator and in partnership still with a classroom teacher and communicating with the parents as well. So as you can see, this year so far, we've had 78 total incidences. 60 of those were deemed major, 17 of those were deemed minor. Here is our discipline infractions by type. So again, you can see that we've made some great gains this year in particular in just lowering the amount of discipline infractions that we've seen. For us at Horizon, the majority of the discipline infractions that we see coming in are mostly due to physical contact. Now, that's not always due to two individuals fighting per se, but a lot of pushing, shoving. We see a lot of our discipline infractions due to physical aggression during unstructured time. So definitely during recess time, our students are very impulsive, and in isolation, they know the tools and the strategies that they can use, but applying it in the moment is really tricky and something that we're trying to be as proactive about as possible, and something I'll talk about and how we're doing that when we get to the interventions and successes. So the buses as well continues to be a challenge for us. Definitely we've seen an improvement since the beginning of the year, but again, a really challenging time for our students. Again, sometimes, by the end of the day, they're overstimulated. It's been a long day of learning, and to be on the bus with many other students and just one driver can sometimes pose some challenges for our students. So again, trying to be as proactive as possible and partnering with the bus company to reward students who are following our bus expectations. We have had one suspension this year. So that was just one out-of-school suspension, no in-school suspensions. So some successes and interventions. On the left-hand side, you will see some interventions that we've implemented this year or have continued to implement at Horizon. One thing that we've implemented that we are excited about is our all-school ticket system. So this is really in partnership with all of our classroom teachers, and specifically through our care team, and really being more intentional about what we're focusing on with our students and being proactive and giving them the tools they need and teaching of a specific strategy or an area of need that we're seeing. So for example, when our care team meets monthly, we pull up Qualtrics, we look at our discipline data, and we go through the graphs and look at trends. So previously, around October, when we did this as a team, we saw that there was an uptick in the amount of discipline and referrals coming in for technology use. So students who were not using technology appropriately. So together as a team, we identified that specific area as a need to focus for the entire school. We developed what we call a cool tool, which is basically just a lesson for students, for classroom teachers to walk their students through. This specific one was what the purpose is for technology, what we use it for in the classroom for learning, how it can benefit us, and how to use it appropriately, not only at school, but home as well. So our teachers took the students through a lesson on how to use technology appropriately. And then for that month, we tracked our discipline data, and students worked on earning tickets for displaying appropriate technology use in the classroom. So teachers specifically rewarded students who were following our expectations around technology use, and we collected our tickets, and once we hit a certain amount, we earned an all-school reward. So we've continued that cycle month to month, focusing on looking at the data, looking at a trend that we're seeing that we need to focus on, providing a tool for our students, teaching around it, and then rewarding and giving positive praise when we see students demonstrating those expected behaviors. So really love the ticket system. Our students have been really it's been well received in our building. Our MTSS meeting. So again, just really refining that process in our building. Specifically, again, trying to be as proactive as possible. So when we see students who have 2 referrals within a month, we are sending out a problem-solving form to our teachers. So we will push out that form to our teachers and say, hey, so-and-so has received 2 Skyward referrals in the month of December. We'd like to invite you to a problem-solving meeting. The classroom teacher comes and joins, usually it's myself and Christy, our student services team, sometimes our instructional coaches as well, and classroom teacher, and we all sit down and kind of problem solve around that student. So the teacher has an opportunity to share some things that they've already been doing to support that student. We give additional ideas and strategies that they could try. We track that data for about 6 weeks and then come back together and share some successes or talk about next steps. So from there, if a student has to have next steps, we talk with our student services team and how we can support them with a small group, focusing on some of those lagging skills that they're working on. So that has been really great as well to proactively support our students. Other interventions that we are doing is just small groups with our school counselor, Nellie, our school psych, pulling small groups as well, partnering with families, in communication with the bus company as well. In terms of some successes and some other things that we're doing to support our students at Horizon, we have the Pirate Pride Awards. Those will go out every single week, so teachers have the opportunity to nominate students at Horizon who are demonstrating all of our expectations throughout the school. And then each Friday, Christy reads off those students who received that award. They get to come down to the office and pick out of our prize bin. Again, working for an all-school ticket incentive. So each month we have a specific thing that we're working towards, and we earn that if we earn that goal. Partnering with Right Way. So in addition to the bus shout outs that they do, we also have them hand out tickets as well to the students. So sometimes our students at Horizon need a little bit more motivation than just the bus shout outs. They really will work for those tickets, knowing that it goes to an all school incentive. So that's been really powerful as well. That's it. Questions for Horizon?
Yeah, I have actually a couple questions for you.
Yep.
Oh, wow, okay, we're next into the next one. So there was like on your last slide, it referred to purposeful people. What
There we go.
What is a purposeful people?
Purposeful People was our SEL curriculum that we adopted this year. So our school counselor, Kelsey, we talked about it at the board meeting earlier this year, but she partners with classroom teachers. She pushes in and teaches 2 lessons a month, and the classroom teachers teach an additional two lessons.
And I think that one's designed to kind of complement Character Strong, right?
Yep.
So it kind of flows right. Character Strong is what we have at ASA. So it's kind of like the younger sibling of Character Strong.
Yeah, and that's a work in progress for us too, and trying to embed that in all of our interventions as well. So in particular, like Tree of Choices is something that you'll hear a lot about within that curriculum, and we try to use that language with our students within the interventions and small groups that we're doing as well.
On the other slide, you had a lot of detailed breakouts by the type of incidents that were there. Yeah. Is that like some kind of standard coding, or how does that, where's that come from?
Yeah, it's coded in Skyward. So whenever we go in and put like a Skyward referral, there's like a drop down of all the different infractions you can choose from.
But I mean, where does that come from in terms of?
Yeah, I'll take it back in time here, Larry. So there was a point in time where the codes that existed in Skyward for each of the buildings were kind of all over the place.
Okay.
And there was concerted effort by the APs in all 4 buildings to have the same codes so you can compare year to year, building to building. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but the APs meet yearly to kind of review those.
So
Does that allow you to then target specific things in terms of interventions for that?
Yeah,
Okay.
so like I said, when we are doing like those care meetings monthly, we look at our Qualtrics data and look at, this is one specific graph that we look at, and look at like where we're seeing the trends the most. So within that month, looking at the data and seeing, do we have an influx of technology misuse? Is it physical contact? Is it defiance? And then honing in on a specific thing that we want to work on.
And this I may be jumping ahead, but is any of this data required to be reported to the state or anybody in terms of disciplinary actions?
Well, our suspension data, I don't know about any, I mean, our attendance data, all of that is required to be communicated to the state. But like broken down by this, no.
Yeah, there's specific things related to harassment, right? There's an anti-harassment report. I think I've actually shared those results. So you have to go through all of that. There's specific, so to your question, there's codes we establish. There's also, we have to review that in relation to what the state codes things as in terms of the annual kind of discipline reports that we do have to submit to DPI.
And to ensure that we're in compliance with what the state and federal reporting guidelines are, both Candace and Becky Cook will go through and review referrals in Skyward to make sure that the infractions that are in there meet the appropriate code.
I have a question about the buses. When there's an infraction on the bus, is that tied into the disciplinary numbers, I guess, that you guys are reporting on?
Yes.
And then I guess what happens if there is repeated infractions on the bus? And I guess I wonder too, like how many buses do we have and how many issues are we having on each of those buses?
Yeah, so we have 16 total buses. I would say, again, like Beth had kind of talked about, we try to practice progressive discipline. So when we see, usually it starts with, I would say, either a bus write-up that the bus driver gives, and then we get it at Horizon, it's faxed over, or a lot of the times it's even just word of mouth. Like a student will come to me in the morning or at the end of the day and say that they're having an issue. So trying to be as proactive as we possibly can and just being on top of it. So pulling the student or the students that are having a challenge on the bus, talking to the bus driver, trying to get to the bottom of it. A lot of the times I'll just ask for bus footage from Right Way and view the footage myself, but trying to just first start with giving them the tools that they need to be successful on the bus, and then from there taking next steps. So if it's repeated things that are happening on the bus, looking at like an assigned seat, things like that, always in partnership with the family, making them aware of it so we can support here at school and at home.
So those bus incidences, are they more of like verbal fighting, physical contact, a little bit of bullying?
Yeah.
What are we seeing on the buses?
I would say the majority of the things that we're seeing on the bus is verbal, a lot of inappropriate language, swearing, not a lot of physical aggression, maybe some pushing and shoving, but no like physical fights or punching or anything like that. A lot of it is just the unstructuredness, right? And they know that there's one driver and 40 plus kids on a bus, so they're testing the waters a little bit. That's definitely the times that they experiment with their vocabulary. So I would say that's the majority of what we're seeing, just inappropriate language, making sure that they're staying seated and hands to their self. A lot of it, like Beth said, it's not that they're trying to be, they're not trying to hurt each other. It's a lot of just goofing around. But with that goofing around, people can get hurt.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Lexi.
Thank you.
I will say there are times, and maybe this was part of the question too, Ashley, there are times where you can remove someone from the ability to ride the bus for a period of time. We're required to provide transportation too, so there's limits to that, just like we're required to allow kids to attend school, but we can suspend. So probably more so, I'm guessing, at the older levels that might be a strategy that's used than some of the younger options, but that can happen as well.
I definitely hear from my children that there's a stark difference between the middle school, high school bus and the elementary bus. So
Yeah.
that's kind of why I asked.
I would imagine. Yeah.
And having lived in the secondary bus world with Katie, like Mike said, there are some limitations. So the way that Wisconsin state law is written, it's similar to suspending a student out of school. So technically, you can only remove their ability to ride the bus for 5 consecutive days unless you're following that same expulsion policy that you would for student discipline. So there, I mean, that at times makes it challenging.
Katie.
All right, welcome to the middle school. So you're going to start to hear some repeated pieces, so I'm not going to repeat all of them verbatim, but I will try to highlight some of the components that stand out from the middle school. Attendance patterns are very similar, where we were hovering around the 95% for the months of September to December, and now we've kind of dipped into the low 90s for January and February. Same illnesses, one campus setting is great, and then we start sharing, germs. So we're kind of seeing the similar trends from the other 2 buildings. Our attendance rate when this data was pulled was at 95.7%. We do have a larger population of students who are chronically absent at the middle school. School avoidance is a real thing for teenagers. And when we get into the avoidance pattern, it only becomes worse. So this is where having a school psychologist that's just based at ESA is essential to be able to help partner with parents to get the support that's needed to get kids at school. Because when they're not at school for consecutive days in a row, it just gets harder and harder to get them back. You will see that our tardies are higher than at the high school, and that's because we have more periods. So the middle school has an 8-period day, where at the high school they have a 4-period day. So there's a little bit of difference in the data there, and that is why. Discipline incidents over the last 3 years, I just wanted to point out to you all, Larry had mentioned about calibration when it comes to the codes. We also calibrated back in that teal time frame, which was 22-23 school year, on just getting the referrals written into Skyward, especially at the middle school and the high school. That is very useful data and information that we use to plan both proactively and reactively. So that's where you see that big uptick. That's because we really made a concerted effort. We trained our teachers on how to enter referrals themselves. So at the middle school and high school, teachers write referrals for classroom managed behaviors, and then office staff can also write those referrals, but that's why there was that big uptick. Then we started having the data and being able to use it to plan. We implemented some more learning and systems in place, and we saw it kind of level off to now where you see we've had some wins and lower data in some months, and about similar for the past few years in other months. Total disciplinary infractions, you'll also see an increase here at the middle school because we are diligent as far as getting the referrals in there for all of our staff. Our kids see many more staff than they do at Horizon and PLE, so it's important that our teachers are writing those referrals so that way we can see those patterns pop up should that occur. So our numbers are there, more minors than majors. That's a good thing. Those are those classroom issued infractions that then we see if those are continued. That's where it would then switch over into a major. And sometimes we have a behavior that's exhibited that is just a major infraction. It bumps up to that level 2 right away based upon what happened. By grade level, this is the distribution that we have for majors and minors at each grade level. You'll notice that 8th grade has a large number of minors and fractions because a lot of our 8th graders have cell phones and are learning how to use them in places called like the lunchroom. And so we have a lot of cell phone violations in 8th grade. So that tells us that we need to stay on top of. It goes in the locker at 7:25. They have it during lunch. It goes back in the locker, and they have it at the end of the day. But we see more cell phone use at our 8th grade level, which is one of the reasons for the larger number of minor infractions there. Disciplinary infractions by type, again, you'll see that minor technology infractions is our highest bar on that graph. On the far left-hand column, those are our top 3 infraction areas, all minors. Then we get into inappropriate behavior, which is really the catch-all for middle school behavior, because oftentimes it's coupled. One thing is paired with another thing, and so if there's multiple pieces together, it's inappropriate behavior. Inappropriate language we see, and then again, very similar with the physical contact and aggression. interaction, most oftentimes seen outside at the playground. Just had a conversation last week that the wrestling mat is different than the turf at recess, right? And so I get you're practicing moves, not at school during lunchtime. So just a lot of those, again, conversations about time and place. Out-of-school suspensions, we do have a higher number of out-of-school suspensions and in-school suspensions at the middle school. I liked your question about what an in-school suspension looks like. At the middle school, we do issue in-school suspensions much more frequently than the other buildings because our philosophy is really that's a time to reflect, restore, and to learn. So we have built a very robust system where we have activities that kids work through during in-school suspension that are academic in nature. They get their coursework from their teacher. We have supervision to make sure there's not learning lost, but they also get supplemental activities that are based upon restoring relationships that were broken due to their behavior, reflecting on their behavior, and if there's learning that needs to occur, that happens. That might be something like interviewing a custodian who now had to clean up from something that you did, right? It might be something like greeting our substitutes when they come in the morning because their behavior was disruptive the day before. Those are all ways that kids can learn from their behavior that's really purposeful at school. So that's why in-school suspension is more frequent there. Pre-expulsion and expulsions, we have 0 this first semester of the school year. And then behavior interventions. We have some highlighted here that are different from the other buildings. Like we mentioned, Larry, we have the Character Strong resource that we have now been implementing for the past 2-3 years, and then Purposeful People was brought on at Horizon. We continue to mold with that content and do what's best for our kids and the needs that we're seeing, but we definitely use that as one of our main resources. Our Wellness Center has been open this school year and has been serving students here really from November up to this point in time, place that kids can go to reset, recharge, or relax and help manage their emotions. And then our planning MTSS structures, we've got lots of different meetings that occur within the MTSS models to make sure that we're engaging our whole building on wrapping our arms around kids as behaviors pop up. Also within ASA, we focus on creating supportive classroom environments, integrating some of this SEL work into academics, and then we have our explicit instruction. So you'll see on the left-hand bottom, the left 3 in that column, those are some activities that you might see during bell work when you come in and see instruction in a core classroom. Those are ways to get kids connecting with one another, asking questions, having a video prompt, and they can discuss it. The pieces that are in the middle then are also woven into academics. Learning is collaborative, and sometimes kids need to know how to engage with one another. So having some discussion stems, having some group contracts when they work together on group projects about how we're gonna work together. And then on the right-hand side, that big blue poster travels with me wherever I go because I say, is this rude behavior? Is this teasing behavior? All of a sudden it gets to bullying. It's a really slippery slope. And we have conversations with kids all the time about that. We talk about how it's their responsibility. If they notice that something they say or did negatively impacted someone, they need to make it right? It's up to them to be able to recognize that. So it's a really valuable tool that we have in all of our classrooms. This year, we have a parent advisory group at ASA, which is a group of 15 committed parents to providing us feedback and doing some learning, and we just held a session on understanding and addressing bullying behavior at ASA. Really phenomenal experience to spend an hour with our 15 parent advisory group members to learn about the different structures that are there and to hear about, what they think we need, which really is to work closely with our community and our athletic team. Because we have a lot of kids that participate in different activities and athletic programs. How can we work with our coaches? How can we work with our advisors to be speaking the same language and have the same expectation on the court or on the field as we do within the classrooms? So lots of takeaways there on how we can do better on engaging people outside of our building to help support our kids. And then I talked a little bit about that major behavior response guide. That's that robust list of activities that we can use to provide kids when we're seeing some bigger behaviors. Any questions from the middle school?
Bullying. In years past, we've seen surveys just putting a lot of attention on that, concerns by parents. What do you see the trends this year?
Funny that you ask. I was just preparing for our school advisory team meeting, which is tomorrow night, and we set our student goal based on what's called the Student Behavior Index. It takes 5 different measures, such as teasing, rumors and lies, online bullying, pushing and shoving, things like that, and it compiles it into an average score. So we set a goal to reduce that by 0.4 of a point, and so far we're down by 0.2 of a point. So that's good news. It's trending in the right direction. We want a lower score. So that's a positive thing. You know, I think that we're doing a lot of learning about the difference between bullying and harassment, right? And so harassment, it's where it's that targeted language, right, that's used to a certain group of people. Bullying is repeated over time, right? So sometimes they can dip and it can be a little bit blurry as to what is what. But being really clear with our definitions, we just met with our whole student body for the second time to talk about that, make sure kids know what we mean when we say bullying, what we mean when we say harassment, what the consequences are, and then we shared that out with parents as well last week, or actually this week in the bulletin.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you go back to the previous slide just for a second, because I think you had, so yeah, with the, that one too, maybe, go back to the previous one too. So the thing in the center, the circle diagram with all the little.
The wheel of emotions.
It's emotions, okay.
Yes. So you start in the middle, and you choose one of those emotions, and then you work your way out to make it more specific, because oftentimes, you know, you say, how are you doing? Fine, right? So it helps them kind of identify it a little bit deeper.
Okay. So then, is any of this stuff incorporated into your parent advisory group so that they know and understand what this is all about? So
This is a slide taken from that group, and now we're tasked with how do we get this information out to more people. We have various communication channels at ASA, but I don't know how effective they are. So that's going to be our topic for April, is we're going to talk about how we can improve effective communication channels with our families, because when we work in partnership, we double a child's chance of success. So we need to strengthen that a little bit more. And yes, everyone gets lots of emails. So how else can we get this information? Because the group was impressed with what we're doing, but we need to grow that base of knowledge a little bit more to ensure that we're all speaking the same language.
So how did you select the parents to participate in your parent advisory?
This was Anthony's brainchild. I just get the pleasure of continuing with it. So
I never got to see it through.
You're welcome anytime. So he just sent out information and said who's interested. We had over 50 applicants or people that were interested, and then it was a random pool. So it's important about a group size. You want it to be workable. So we chose 5 from each grade level as
15
yep,
altogether.
15, 5 from each grade level, and then we have our school advisory team. There's a rep there for each meeting as well, and then Paul and I are there. Yeah, it's been great.
I do want to say, Katie, I appreciate that you guys are really working with the students to help them understand what bullying truly is. Recently, when we had a special event and a speaker came in, she talked about this, that students might be quick to go tell on someone and say, I'm being bullied. But the truth is, if someone kicks you under the lunch table, that's not bullying. They're being mean, but they're not bullying you. And that speaker was very good about that. And I appreciate that you guys are working on that to help our kids so that they're not unnecessarily accusing others of bullying if that's not really what it is.
Agreed.
Back to the parent, how many years have you had the parent advisory, or was it?
Just this year.
Just this year, okay.
Just this year. Yep. So we're playing around with the idea. Do we do like a 2-year term? Do we just add 6th grade family, right? Because we only meet for an hour 4 times a year. So we created norms, we created kind of what we want from the group. So to continue to have an impact, right? Just trying to think about that. But it's an exciting conversation to have because people keep showing up, which is exciting. So that's the first step.
I had one quick question.
Yes.
Looking at the minor technology, which obviously is cell phone use, and I do hear from parents saying that can be a distraction. Is it getting worse as more phones are, getting in kids' hands younger? Kind of what's your trend on that?
I would say it's both cell phones and the computer, right? So we know that technology addiction is real. And so our focus from an academic standpoint, as far as having bell-to-bell instruction and activity and not having downtime, because if a kid has a tab open with a game, they go to that next classroom and the tab's still open, right? So just making sure that we're having best practices from like a Chromebook standpoint, because we do still see our fair amount of gaming. When it comes to cell phones, we've been really adamant about keeping cell phones out of the classroom setting, and AirPods, because that was a big thing that we were battling, and it was just a power struggle back and forth. That would be considered technology as well. And this year we have said, like keep the AirPods with your cell phone away. You have wired headphones, things like that. The other thing with phones are the ability to have videos and pictures. And we have a hard and fast rule that you cannot take pictures or videos at school. And of course we get, Miss Benoni, what about a selfie? You are in a public space and you don't know who's behind you or what's behind you, so no pictures or videos. So some of those minors are because kids might be appropriately taking a picture of themselves, but we've said that doesn't meet our expectations, so we document it in case it's a continued behavior. So I would say it has not gotten worse. It's probably stagnant and there's always room to improve, but that's where we can do some learning together with families as well. So yeah, that's kind of my reflection on that.
This may be another question.
Sure.
I'm probably thinking, and none of you have talked about it yet, school resource officers, what's their role, and maybe in your building versus the other buildings? But
Yeah. So I can just speak for our building. If we have any instances of drugs or alcohol or physical contact, the SRO is part of that communication and response immediately. And then we'll work in conjunction as far as what support is needed for pieces like that. School resource officers have also been very helpful when it comes to attendance and truancy and working with community resources and doing home visits and things of that nature, meeting with kids and talking with them about the importance of school attendance. I think that those would be the two areas that I would say are the most helpful and impactful. They really just have a broader, different perspective, right? And that's what learning is about. And so oftentimes we'll call them in to be able to provide that.
Probably could be vandalism or any theft if any of those things happened.
Yeah.
I just wanted to commend you for the application work that you're having the kids that are serving in-school suspensions, so that they can feel or see the ramifications of their choices. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you.
Okay, PHS.
Are you
Emily's
guys-
back.
I'm back. Are you guys still awake? Just want to make sure. That's been a lot of information. So yes, I'm Emily Hansen. I am one of the associate principals. Jane Matter is my counterpart, and I am here today representing Pewaukee High School. And I brought my computer up here so I can see here too, and not just be squinting at screens. Or if you guys have any more questions that are just a little bit more specific. So I'm really excited to share that at the end of semester one, our attendance rate was the highest that it has been in the last 3 years at 95%. That was a really big victory. That's something that we've really been working on, and I'm going to highlight that more on the next slide. But to go along with that, like Katie said, teenager avoidance of school is really, really high, specifically at the high school. And just to explain a little bit as to how Skyward works, with us having 4 class periods plus resource, if a student misses 66% of the school day, so that's if they miss 3 periods, it is considered a full day absence. If they miss that in between part up to 33% to 66%, that is considered a half day, and anything under that is just considered nothing. You guys didn't hear that. But it's just like we look at those partial days and things like that. But when I'm talking about the fact of like we had 16% of our students who were chronically absent, that is looking at all of those half days added up together and different things like that to get to those days. So I just wanted to explain that because it's different at the high school versus the other schools. For our truancy cases, we did file on 2 students this past semester, and we did issue 5 truancy tickets. 2 of those 5 truancy tickets were students who did not attend Saturday detentions after they were expected to, and we followed that progressive discipline. When looking at tardies, I'm just highlighting the coming to school tardies. So we had 537 excused tardies to resource or first hour, and we had 475 that were unexcused. Looking at this, a trend that I see is that a lot of it is first hours versus that resource time. So that's when we're also getting the juniors and seniors into the school. And if we were to break it down by day, Paula Schultz, who is our attendance secretary, and I were talking about it, Friday is our heaviest day of students that are tardy. As we move into the attendance interventions, like I mentioned, our attendance rate is higher this year. We spent a lot of time last year making sure our systems were in place for the letters that we send. We send a lot of attendance letters at the high school. For this year, we have sent 287, that means 287 students have been contacted that they have missed 5 days of school in the first semester. That is for any reason. Then the 10-day letters went out. We had 77 students receive the 10-day letter, which at that point, anything past that, otherwise, unless it's something that is majorly approved, is considered unexcused. And then we did change this year, and when a student hits 15 days, we did institute med-only letters. So that would mean after that point, if a student's absent, we would need that medical note. Something else that we've been doing a lot of between Jane and I are our attendance meetings. We have had an increase of those and making sure we have our attendance contracts set out with very attainable goals for students so they don't see this as a burden. They see this as something that, hey, I can do this. We've also worked really closely with Steph Gilmore this year, our alt ed teacher, of figuring out ways of how can we get kids to school as to where they're at, and just really been focusing on looking at utilizing those programs that we have here in the building. We have done a lot of home visits, and Larry, I know you asked about the school resource officer. Officer Buttahagen is always willing, Officer Mayak as well, is always willing to help us with those school visits. We always go in pairs, so whether it's Jane, me, a counselor, Michelle Davison, it's really great knowing that we have all these options to go and check out and see what we can do to support. And then something else we've really focused on this year is how can we work with those outside providers. We are actually looking at redoing our release of information in order to just be able to communicate better with therapists. We have been utilizing our nurses a lot this year. I actually think I bugged them 4 times today to help me with phone calls to just figure out what's going on, how can we better support. So that's just some of the things that we're doing this year. Now to the discipline infractions. You guys are going to see our total incidents are very high. But you're also going to see that our majors and our minors, there are more majors than minors, which tells a couple different stories. The first story that it tells is that our teachers are doing a really good job of documenting this year. They're making sure that there is that paper trail that is there to make sure that a student could have up to 8 different teachers. We need to make sure in the office that we know what's happening for all these different teachers so that we can support and we can make sure that all those teachers know what's going on. But that's also telling me, or should we be having more minors? Should actually our number even be higher than that to make sure that we're following our process of making sure that we can do those interventions earlier? When looking at it by grade level, we are, again, the total incidents are in dark blue, and then we're looking at the minors versus the majors. The incidences by grade, the seniors, we're looking at 59 incidents. The juniors, we're looking at 82. The sophomores, 112. And the freshmen, 86. When we break it down by type, one that we utilize a lot is cell phones. And when we say cell phones, that does not just mean your phone, it also means AirPods. That number is significantly high because of the tracking system and what our progressive discipline is at the high school. So if the teacher sees it the first time, they tell you to put it away. The second time, it goes on the teacher's desk until the end of the class period. The third time, it ends up in the office, and the student comes and gets it at the end of the day, and they have to check in with an administrator. The fourth time, a parent has to, or guardian has to come pick it up from school. And then the fifth time, if we get to that point, the deal is that they're not supposed to bring it on campus. However, we also understand that we have young drivers, and parents are very concerned about how they're getting to school if they get to school. So that's where we start check-in, check-out systems with the office. So a student may need to turn their cell phone into Mrs. Schultz for an extended amount of time until we can see have they earned it back. So that is why our cell phone numbers are extremely high. Just like Katie said, we also have that catch-all. When it comes to that inappropriate behavior or disruption. And then academic dishonesty is higher this year. This past summer, we spent some time making a matrix to really lay out what should happen if a teacher is suspecting that, walked through the different stages and really made it clear to families and to students what is academic misconduct and dishonesty. And we just actually completed a homeroom lesson, an ACP lesson on that as well, to make sure that everyone was on the same page with that, because we saw such a stark jump. Moving on to our suspensions, our numbers are really low this year. This is something that we are very, very, very excited about. Again, we are really focusing on progressive discipline, utilizing some of those other things that we have, including those Saturday detentions, working a lot with families. But yes, our suspension numbers are really low, and that's something that we're very excited about for this year. Looking at our expulsion and pre-expulsions, we have not expelled any students this semester. Looking at our pre-expulsions, we currently have 12 students on pre-expulsion. That does not mean that all 12 happened this semester. This is for students who are on pre-expulsion from any time in high school. 2 of those students on pre-expulsion actually graduated at the end of semester 1. And of that original 12, 58% of them are currently in the class of 2025 and or graduated.
In fact, I would say there's been very few that are from this year.
Very, one or two.
Because pre-expulsions come to me, and knocking all the wood, but this is, I can just tell you, by and large, discipline across this is the quietest year I can remember. I've had very few things that have come to my level, far less than probably since I've been superintendent.
Now I'm going to be calling him later.
Now we'll have 7 pre-expulsions in the next month. And
you just jinxed that.
But now, I mean, it's so I'm just saying your suspension numbers are super low. To put it in perspective, and there was a change, but at one point when we only had about 600 kids at Pewaukee High School, we had years of north of 200 suspensions, and you're seeing 17 suspensions.
For 882 students.
Yeah, 882 students, and there's years where maybe 600 students back in the day. You know, I mean, because I was associate principal here till 2004, and I remember having a goal to bring it down from over 200, and then we get down to 150, and then finally get it under 100. But that was with 200 some less kids. So to have the level of behavior that we have with the very low, I mean, that's a very low number of suspensions, which is a good thing.
And I am going to note that all of these are out-of-school suspensions. A question I'm sure you're asking is, Emily, why don't we do in-school suspensions? That's something that Brian, Jane, and I are continuously trying to brainstorm. What's the best way to do it? We want to make sure that we are available for teachers at all times, and also our offices are very busy places. So how can we find the best place for a student? We don't feel like we could give them the best in-school suspension experience or attention, which is why we don't usually jump to that. Let me take that back. I think we had 2 half-day in-school suspensions earlier this semester.
Quick question for you on that.
Sure.
The 7.5 to 1, what is?
That was the little to no correlation between gender and suspension rates.
What does the ratio mean in terms of?
7.5 to 1, what is that?
7 boys to 5
I think it was
girls.
7.5 boys to 1 girl.
Okay.
So just jumping to some of those behavior interventions and supports, some of those new things that we are doing this year, just to highlight, because again, like we as a district do a lot of the same things with those proactive meetings and phone calls with parents. That was something over the summer that I did a lot of, looking at the students who were chronically absent last year, our high flyers, our top 50 students, the ones that were returning. I reached out to those families to say, hey, how was the summer going? How's it, anything I should know moving into this year? And that's one of the big recommendations that's going to be coming from the truancy task force, who will be releasing our findings in just a month or 2. Something else that we're doing is really utilizing those community resources. Again, this idea came from that task force that I was on, but for discipline-wise, we are using detour and U-turn classes for AODA. So in other words, if a student is caught with a nicotine vape, I believe it is the U-turn class that then we can have the students go to, which then double as also their AODA recommendation that we have. And it is an 8-hour course through ARC. It ends up being cheaper than the ticket. So instead of us double hitting those families with saying, hey, you have to go to a U-turn class and you're also going to be issued a ticket from the village of Pewaukee, if the student completes that U-turn class by a set date, that ticket's held in abeyance and the ticket is not issued to them. If they don't complete that U-turn class, then the ticket is issued to them. The detour class is for alcohol and marijuana. So again, we as in Jane and I, receive communication from ARC when a student completes that, and we have heard great things from families. The families are involved in that. There is a parent portion specifically for the detour class. Again, and then we're also really working on that releases of information form and utilizing all of the supports in here, from the health room to our student services team, to make sure that we are all communicating with whoever we need to communicate with, especially when we're seeing that uptick in behavior if there is that outside community resource. Something else that we really have worked on this year as a high school is reviewing our future ready skills and just calibrating those across the board. Two things that we've implemented this past semester are silent mentors for those students that we're noticing are continuing to score really low on their future ready skills. And we're also seeing those consistent, persistent discipline issues with, or just concerns from teachers. So we have implemented, we're gonna have 34 silent mentors working with students throughout the building and just really building that positive relationship. And as well as the implementation of the Dean's List, which for semester one, we put together some parameters based off of last year, looking at those future ready skills. So a person on the Dean's List, all of their future ready skills had to be at least met or meeting those expectations. If 50% of those future ready skills were meeting expectations and advanced, as well as 90% attendance rate and no major infractions, they were on the Dean's List. And then the Distinguished Dean's List is, again, looking at those future ready skills that met 75% of them had to be advanced. So that was really exciting. We were able to finally notify families last week as to where their student was on that. And again, just looking at those scores and making sure the teachers are being consistent across the board. We would not be where we are at all if it wasn't for Michelle Davison. She is so impactful when it comes to attendance. I wish we could clone Michelle and have her at the high school more often, specifically when it comes to discipline and dysregulated students, because the way that she has built these relationships with students over their time here at Pewaukee is just magical. And then finally, we are continuing our upperclassmen mentorship program, which is their students are tapped junior year. Natalie, I'm looking at you. I believe it's junior year. And then they help out senior year in freshman homerooms.
Yep.
Yes. And I felt like there was one other thing I really wanted to highlight. And just the last thing that we really are doing for behavior interventions is that this year we have started using an online pass system. That has really helped with, one, safety, us knowing where students are in the building, and two, it's really helping students stay on task when they are leaving the classroom and making sure they're getting where they need to be and getting back in time, and we are being able to find trends that way and address students to make sure that they are in the classroom learning as much as they can. Any questions about the high school?
You know, I have a couple of questions for you.
Yes.
Lily. So last year you were the dean of students. This
Yes.
year you're associate principal,
Yes.
right? And how is that working out? And is, I mean, what did you bring, or, I mean, it seems like the numbers are down.
Mm-hmm.
What's the cause? I mean, is it the two principal or two associate?
I definitely think it's really impactful having two associate principals at the high school. We are able to address, brainstorm, and be more present for students. The work that Jane and I are doing could not be done by one person, being as present and being involved with families, making the phone calls. It's doing it by myself with Paul Bursai as my support as well. Last year, it's just, it helps a lot having two, and also being able to get into classrooms, being present in the classrooms, and we've also been able to focus more on different areas of the building. So for example, I work very closely with the alt ed program, like I mentioned, and Jane's working very closely with the Insight program, being able to support and just set up those systems more in those areas to make sure that discipline and classroom management and expectations are where they should be.
You also had some numbers up there relative to the vaping and drug use.
Sure.
Are those students that are potentially on that pre-expulsion list?
It depends. Students where it is a first-time nicotine vape are not put on pre-expulsion. When a student is found with a weed pen, a vape with marijuana in it, it is at that point that is usually goes to a pre-expulsion, especially if it is in our possession. And then the distribution, if a student was to distribute it, it was then that it would be taken to Dr. Katie for possible expulsion.
One, it's great, I mean, in terms of the numbers that are there. So one other big question for the 2 or 3 of you that are still here. With the absenteeism and or tardy stuff, when do you find out that data? I mean, is it something that's real time for you, or how do you get it?
So I'm going to speak specifically for the high school. This is something that we look at every Wednesday. Every Wednesday morning when we get together for our student services meeting, the letters automatically run through Skyward. I update a spreadsheet that I have with chronically absent. And then we have a discussion about students who are hitting different points of letters. And wow, this student has missed a lot of school. What's going on? Who's reaching out? And it's a collaborative conversation as to what we can do to support these families.
But in terms of the day, I mean, it's immediate. Like it's real-time response. So if Johnny's absent from first block and it's unexcused, there's no parent call, you get an email as a parent.
By 11:30 is when the
that day.
first roll goes out. If you miss resource first or second hour for the high school, 11:30 is when you're notified. If we haven't heard anything, and then for third and fourth hour, the call goes out at 3 o'clock. And same with, we just instituted tardies phone calls as well this year.
Not that we've ever received an email in my house, but.
I mean, it's really that, the system generates that data for you.
Yes.
Paula does a very good job of communicating. Paula Schultz, who's the attendant.
And I know, Larry, you had mentioned, like, this is the most data you've seen. This is stuff that we look at least monthly, right? So the attendance is more frequent, but the behavioral data is reviewed by a school-based team, whether that would be our grade level teams or our school leadership teams, every couple weeks. It's really important. If we're gathering data, we need to use it, right? So it's been really helpful to be able to plan and to support around.
But back to the attendance, because I mean, you're sending out the letters, so the letters are automatically generated from the system. But on a daily basis, I mean, if somebody's up to the 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 day, 5 day, do you get like a red, yellow, green kind of an alerts or anything that says, hey, Larry Dukes has been missing 3 days of classes or 4 days? And
So at the high school level, we go ahead and we run our letters every Wednesday morning at 2:30 in the morning. The system automatically generates it, so that means through Tuesday, then we can look at that attendance, and then we're able to pull reports to be able to pull that information about 5 day versus 10 day versus chronically absent. And then there are codes that are in Skyward system for alerts, so that, for example, Paula knows when a student is at 5 days versus med only. There's different codes that are put into place.
I would say one other thing too is that there are some students or families that we maybe have our eye on that we're looking at more frequently. So for example, we had one family in particular this year who we were working on making sure their student was getting to school. So that was someone that we were looking at daily. And then if they weren't getting there by a certain time, doing a home visit.
Yeah, and PLA works kind of in the same ramifications. Obviously, with our students, it's parent responsibility for getting kids to school, so we look at that from that lens as well. We pull monthly attendance, but Julie Bowden in the office is my wingman when it comes to that, and she is monitoring in addition to myself. We have students that we continuously monitor, but she has agreed upon triggers, those things that we talked about within the tiers that she monitors, and as she's entering attendance, as they trip those different things, then she's providing me with a printout, and then we go through our next steps from there, whether it's an email, a phone call, or in one case, we've been doing home visits.
One other question, and I know Lexi was just there in the class, but either Anthony or Mike, do we have any way to look at our data versus comparative with other schools, high schools, or anything like that, or not? But
Yes, so as being a part of the Waukesha County Task Force, yes, the counties, we are able to see what our attendance looks like versus others. What I can say is that us as a district we are leaps and bounds ahead of other districts in the area for what we are doing for interventions and what we're doing to get students to school. which is really exciting to hear, but also what else can we do kind of questions. And unfortunately, we know that this is a nationwide situation when it comes to chronic absenteeism, and nobody has the answer at this time. But what we're doing at Pewaukee, other districts are taking and using as the model moving forward. So Mike, when you review that task force, a lot of those ideas, you're gonna say, yep, our administrators are already doing this.
Yeah, to that end, not to toot the ASA horn, but Joe Schrader from ASA, the Association of Wisconsin School Administrators, reached out to us to write an article for that state publication about our attendance rate. So I did that for him back in the fall, just because we have seen, by working together, it truly is a collaborative effort as far as what we can do.
And some discipline is state reported that you could get.
Yes.
I'd have to see but not anything to this detail. Would you have any comparable you could look at?
Yeah, from a discipline, correct.
We get a copy of the article that they wrote, or was it out there?
I can send it to you, Larry.
It's coming soon there.
So I think I applaud you guys for pulling together this data. I mean, it's a lot more than we've ever seen probably in terms of what's there. But also, I think given the importance, and if you're working on a county task force in terms of absenteeism, it's a bigger issue out there, and it's one of those things where it's like all of the facilities and all the resources are here, but if students are not, they're probably not learning. And so what can we do to help motivate or get parents involved, whatever it takes in order to make that happen? And that's a really big part of what we have to do as a school district. And we're gonna need the partnership with parents on this stuff to make sure it's there. And if there are some behavioral mental health issues tied in with it, that's even more reasons for us to kind of get potentially involved in supporting it, because it's real hard to open that door when they're not here. So thank you very much for what you've done. So
the last comment I would just make is that hopefully what you've seen throughout this is that there's many, many, many approaches that are happening. There's always consequences. Consequences are a blunt instrument. It's one tool. It's very necessary to have consequences. But it's been said here many times, I mean, we don't just teach kids history and reading and mathematics. Behavior and how to interact is part of what we try to teach our students as well. Beth talked about it really well with our youngest learners all the way up. And you can see that there are just many layers of different approaches, because why someone might be truant from school, or why someone might have behavioral issues, it can be, it's not just a black and white situation. That you have to understand that these are complex, nuanced situations with students. So if there's any other questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Have a good evening.
All right, next we have second Friday in January count. John.
In your packet, our school district in Wisconsin, there's two major count dates that you have throughout the year: the third Friday in September and the second Friday in January. The September count is really the bigger of the two counts, because that establishes your revenue limit for the year and really sets where your budget can go in the fall. The second Friday in January count is averaged with that third Friday in September and added summer school to be able to come up with to use for your equalization aid for the following year. This year, from September, the third Friday in September to the second Friday in January, our resident count went up by 2 students over the count dates. That doesn't mean that only 2 additional students moved into the district. We had 30 students who had left the district for various reasons, and we had 32 move into the district over that time period. About average, slightly lower than normal, what we would see from September to January with that change in population, with the numbers of students that we reconcile. Overall, 2,681 full-time equivalent students here on the January, resident students in the January count date. Are there any questions?
All right.
Thanks.
Okay. Then next, we'd like to address the 26-27 school year calendar. And I know, Mike, you did a survey to try and help us understand a little better how the staff felt about it.
Yes. So the 26-27 draft calendar is here for your consideration. It's a fairly typical calendar with the exception of, one thing that's similar to this year. This year was the first year where we added some minutes to kind of get to that end date that didn't bleed into the second week of June. This calendar is, the draft that's in front of you is structured the same way. We would be adding 5 minutes per day. And that, how exactly that would look at each school would be yet to be determined. Again, this is for 26-27, so not next year, but the year after. Otherwise, with the number of days, we would be going to Tuesday into the second week of June, and we know that whether it be parents or staff coming back for a day or two in that second week is not popular. So that was one of the main things that we surveyed the staff about. It was, you can see the graph that's on your memorandum, that it was 70-80% of the staff preferred to add the minutes versus having those 2 days into the second week of June. I'm guessing that similar disposition would be from our parents, from what we've heard in the past. So the principals will work in those buildings to make sure. We have to do a little bit of analysis on the student count because, as I've mentioned, we have a higher hour requirement for grades 7 through 12 than we do at the younger grades. So we've got to determine specifically if those minutes need to be in the student schedule for those grades. They don't need to be student contact minutes, certainly for the elementary schools. It's just about getting to the equivalent of that 190-day work contract for staff. I did put a note in there that there are some things in the survey that we're still considering. For example, I believe one of the things I mentioned was there's strong interest, certainly from elementary staff, to build in a work day. We currently have a day mid-year that for 4K the students don't attend, because as you know, with our thematic rooms, we kind of have to flip those rooms. And so those 4K students are home, and those teachers are heavily involved with flipping the kind of those environments for those students. So thinking about, would we do some kind of a planning or work day for staff in the elementaries on something like that? That's not built in here as of yet. So, and this is the feedback I'd be looking for from the board. My thinking is that if the board was accepting of that, that's something that we could just add in, and I could notify you if that's a decision that we make down the road. But we have to kind of consider just if there's any ramifications of that we'd be concerned, or when that might happen, those kinds of things. So, so with that, I would take any questions that you have specific to this particular calendar. Otherwise, it's pretty similar to other years.
So the high school commencement, it's still to be determined.
That's still to be determined. That would be another element that we would put in along with 8th grade promotion. We just have to, again, the thing that we've run into with high school commencement, usually that first Friday in June is the state track meet, which affects a number of our students, and we don't want our students to have to miss commencement. So is it a week early? Is it something that has to get moved to a Saturday or a Sunday?
Has there been any survey or feedback from parents or anyone on moving graduation to potentially a Friday or a Sunday, or?
No, we haven't specifically surveyed parents on that, because there's, this year we looked at all the different options, and we tried to just find a date that there wasn't those conflicts that we felt were going to affect a number of students. So that's certainly something that we can do, as we haven't played. The big thing to get this out here is people want to know when spring breaks are, when's the start of school, when's the end of school, and a couple of those details. If the board's comfortable, we could notify you of later, and if there weren't any concerns, we'd just update the calendar. Without you necessarily have to take full action here at the board.
Is there a set number of snow days built in?
Yeah, it's a good question, Travis. We always I think this year's pretty tight. We have about a day and a half that was built into this one. Might not even be a full day and a half. I think it might be 9-10 hours for the secondary side of things. We typically do virtual days here because you never know when you're going to have an emergency shutdown, and something like that isn't realistic. So you always want some capacity in those days. There's plenty of capacity on that elementary side because the hours requirement is, it's 1,050 versus 1,137. So there's substantially less hours that are required there.
And that's kind of where my question was going, because I know you can do some of those virtual days with, certain grade levels, so.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The last one, we didn't require that at the elementaries. It's really for two reasons. One, they have much more leeway with the hours, and two, it's much more practical to do kind of virtual day learning with the older students.
If there are no more questions, can I get a motion?
Move to approve the 26-27 school calendar.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Awesome, thank you. Next, early college credit application considerations. Anthony.
Yeah, so Wisconsin State Statute dual enrollment. There are mainly two programs, the first being early college credit in high school and then start college now. One is focused strictly on technical college and the other is focused on UW systems or private schools within the state of Wisconsin. With early college credit in high school, they do provide the opportunity for students to take college level courses in the summertime. So we have had students that have applied in the past to take classes in the summer. There is one application that is shared with all of you. I did get a couple questions from a couple of you and responded to that. Really the only grounds that we could legally not approve that application would be if we offered a comparable course here at the high school, which in this instance we do not. So the student's application is up for your approval. If there aren't any other questions.
Well, so I did raise some questions, but I think one of the things is you had like the maximum kind of cost, but there is a potential that the student would have some money potential if they're using it for both college credit and high school credit. Is that?
If there is a cost breakdown based on if the student is taking it for college credit and high school graduation credit, which in this case the student is doing that, so he'll earn college credit and high school credit. So there is, I can pull up the cost breakdown here for you.
Like a 3,200, I mean, it was like a chunk of money into what's there, but.
Yeah, so public school districts are reimbursed. So 25% of the tuition paid for students who receive high school and college credit. The early college credit program is reimbursed. 50% of the tuition paid for students who receive only college credit is paid.
So anyway, move to approve. I guess, you ready for it?
Any more questions? Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah. So move to approve the application for the early college credit for the summer of 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, personnel issues. There's no resignations, retirements, or employments, but we do have one individual that's looking to extend their leave.
Yeah, Mr. Hassman, you have his letter and the rationale for just looking to extend through the end of the school year. I think it's an extra 19 days on his leave request for semester 2. So I would certainly support this and take any questions you have, otherwise seek your approval.
He's already on leave, right?
He's already on leave. It would have ended, I believe, he'd have had to return on the 12th of May, but,
Baby was born early.
Baby was born early, so looking to extend that through the end of the school
Move to
year.
approve the extension of the leave for, or do we put in the person's name, but just for the teacher requested?
Yes.
Extended leave for.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Upcoming activities. let's see. Next Monday evening, the 17th, we have our learning session, which we also made our board retreat. That learning session is to go through the results of our board survey and how we're doing as a board. But then Mike and I talked about it, and it seemed like a good time to also add on to that a retreat to just work on, added cohesion and transparency and just work on the relationships within the board. That starts at 4 p.m. There will be dinner served, and I think we're trying to keep it to 4 hours.
Yeah, and if, we finish what we need to do earlier, heck, it can even be shorter.
There you
So,
go.
but yeah, we'll have food provided. Candace will be a part of it. Anthony and John will be a part of it. Candace will be there to present the breakdown, and I think today you had access to the dashboard and to kind of the summary document from the school perception survey that you all completed in November, I want to say. So you have that data, so she'll kind of give you the trends and compare those to previous years. So that'll be a piece of it. That's been our practice in the past. And then kind of the goals of the session as they stand now, and Brent and I are meeting on Wednesday afternoon just to kind of finalize some things, and I'm working on the activities and how this would progress. Right now I have establishing board working norms, define board and administration working norms, clarify board priorities, and establish clear roles and responsibilities for the board and administration. I think those are some things that are kind of targeted outcomes or topics for conversation for this evening.
Okay.
I tried to get into the Qualtrics thing, but I ran into some problems. So did anybody else?
I didn't try it.
To the dashboard?
I didn't look at it yet.
I couldn't get into it, so.
Yeah, email Candace if you have any problems. She should be able to help you.
Okay, and then the following Monday night, February 24th, is another board meeting, 6 p.m. policy committee meeting, followed by a regular board meeting. Monday, March 10th, business affairs at 6, regular board meeting at 7. Tuesday, March 11th is Reality Store. Unfortunately, I'm flying to Florida that morning, so I'll miss out this year. I just absolutely love that activity. Matt and Stacy have already signed up. If there's anyone else that's interested, it is really an awesome activity. Seriously, I sit there and I interview these kids, and I am just blown away by their professionalism and their intelligence, so consider it. April 3rd at 1 p.m. in the district office is a board of canvassers. And then on Monday, April 14th, we have a 6 p.m. business affairs, 7 p.m. board meeting. And that night we will have the oath of office for new board members. And then on Monday, April 28th is a 6 p.m. policy committee meeting with a 7 p.m. regular board meeting. So
On the March 10th meeting, that's when we expect to bring the information for the board to take action on guaranteed maximum price in terms of the referendum projects. And you'll have C.G. Schmidt and Epstein Ewan Architects here. There is renderings and some things that I know Miranda's pushed out that's on the website, but it will get you a lot more detail. So that'll be pretty heavy on the those projects on the 10th.
all right. Let's see. Then the WASB convention and delegate. Let's see. Anthony, John, Mike, Stacy, Matt, Larry, and myself attended. It was another great conference. Definitely the focus this year was a lot on finances. Budgets, the state budget. We really don't know what it is. We could only guess. And a lot of it was talk about the high amount of referendums we're seeing out there. And also just talking about reimbursement rates and funding coming in for charter, voucher, private school versus public. So it was very interesting. I found it very educational as usual. Matt, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I thought that was a good, the budget one was very eye-opening to me.
Yes.
Especially as a new board member and going to that for the first time. And yeah, a lot of the sessions were very financial focused. That one was eye-opening to me.
Yeah.
I went to a pre-convention of the solving the finance puzzle, which was a fire hose.
Yeah.
So that was a big one, but Ann Chapman doing the WASBO.
Yeah, that was very
that
good.
was really insightful, so.
Stacy, anything for you?
Yeah, I did a lot about the legislative atmosphere that's going on in our state right now, and it did light a little bit of a fire in me to try and get a better understanding of why our legislators are making the decisions that they're making regarding school finance, and what I can do to try to advocate for school districts. And when I start figuring that out, I will send a message out to all of you to see if you can help me, because I'll be a much stronger voice of 6 than a voice of 1.
Exactly.
So I'm on a mission to get a better understanding of why they're making the decisions they're making, and what we can say to try and explain to them better what we need. The other one that we went to at the end of our session was on governance, which I thought was really good. There were several different school districts that have employed a governance model, and just some of the key things that they talked about was the relationship between the school board and the administrators in the district. And just talking about, our job is to provide a coherent set of directions to the admin so that we're all moving in the same direction. The superintendent decides how we get where we want to go, and we lead through our policy. So I just thought there was a lot of good instruction in that. And if anyone's interested, I can get the slides from it and share them with you, because I really think that we need to have a full understanding of what our role is as a board versus the admin's role in running the school district. So it was a really good presentation.
Yep, excellent. Also, our group, Anthony, Rachel, Mike, and Larry presented on AI. Really great presentation. I was telling Anthony afterwards that you sit there in these presentations and you think, oh, they're good. But then you sit in ours, and I might be prejudiced, but seriously, I just think the professionalism and the way that we present just really comes off very well. We had standing room only.
Well, there were several people that said when they see that Pewaukee's presenting, they go. It's like, it's not even about the topic, it's the fact that Pewaukee's presenting.
Yeah.
And they want to hear what we have to say.
I just
So
think we
they
do
go.
a good job. Larry, do you have anything to add to that one?
About the session or stuff?
Yeah, the AI session.
Yeah, I mean, it was standing room only, 70, 80 people in the room, so I could count them. And they were there. I mean, they stayed for the whole time in terms of stuff and had questions at the end. And, again, I thought it was very, very complete in terms of what was there. And between Miranda and Rachel, they had this kind of like little roadmap kind of thing, and it was like this little school bus going along in terms of all of the things that had transpired with the rollout and implementation of AI within the district. So it was just like, wow, this is a really neat display of that was there. And I think you did something too with the creation of the podcast essentially at the end of it, or you did?
Yeah, so I had demonstrated some different AI tools that are used by teachers or can be used by administrators as well. So
Right.
there is a tool out there that can take content and turn it into a podcast, and I shared how that worked. So some people had seen it, and some people, it was mind-blowing to them.
I thought it went really
Very
well.
good.
in terms of that, so.
Moving right along, I'm gonna let you speak to the delegate session and
Oh,
how that
fine,
went.
thank you very much. So what happens with the delegate assembly is that, and this happens to be the 2024 booklet, they have not updated it. So this is the positions, if you will, that WASB basically takes if anything pops up in terms of any kind of legislative things that are out there. So in this booklet, I found one item from 1962 that the WASB opposes the creation of a national board of education. So that was in 1962. And then in 1973, the WASB opposes legislation requiring numbered seats on local school boards for purposes of electing board members. So, I mean, it goes back quite a ways in terms of what's there. This year, we actually had 12 different items that were on the docket in terms of the delegate assembly. 10 of those were approved. The 2 that were turned down was the decoupling of public and private school funding, and then accountability and school report card standards right now at this point in time in terms of what's there. But otherwise, I mean, a lot of it is pretty straightforward. There were things that they proposed relative to the Blue Ribbon Commission, licensure for paraprofessionals, or licensure pathways, if you will, early literacy assessments for English learners, consistent standards across all Wisconsin schools, early childhood education funding and public-private partnerships, staff mental health and establishment of educational objectives, truancy, funding for school meal debt, and cybersecurity. So again, those are things that they have, and I think Tammy put in the document that has the summary of the things that were approved that are out there. But if anybody wants to get into more details about the process that they go through, it starts in like in the summer, fall, and then the delegate assembly. There's people that usually sometimes make amendments on the fly with those. And pretty much across the board, all the amendments that kind of were proposed were turned down because it was some change or modification from what had been published. And so it works. There's, I think it said 421 school districts. There were roughly around 290 or so, probably school districts that were actually in attendance and voted on this. So it's a pretty large number, but it does not reflect all 421 districts voting there. But I don't know whatever else I can say with that. And back on the presentations though, so I obviously did the one with the Pewaukees, but I was also invited to sit in on a session with Mike Berry, who's the former John Gahan from Pewaukee, and then also a WASB person on School Finance 101. And we had maybe about 60 or 70 people in that session, but it was 3 hours long on Thursday morning. So, but we had, again, a lot of people stay around. There was a lot of material to cover relative to school financing, and a little bit of the history on that is that there's a huge concern out there, I think at least potentially, with the fact that there's some school districts that are running into financial challenges in terms of what things they look at and monitor. So Stacy, if you're running the finance committee, fund balance, stay on top of that. The budget schedule that we do, things that we look at in terms of the reports that we publish, in terms of our financial position. All of those things are pretty much have to be in place and standards for it. The other thing which I did not know, John, you maybe want to comment on this too, because I think the WASBO group is moving forward with some proposals to establish actually licensure of some sort for school business officials. Is that true? So.
Yeah, there's professional standards that are established by the ASBO International Group, and there's well over 130 professional standards. And the goal of the subcommittee of WASBO was to take those standards and putting them into meaningful groups and narrow that group down. Say, here's what's proficient for a school business official, and we're down to about 35 standards that will guide all of the professional development that WASBO has for their membership in the future on an annual basis. Also potentially be adaptable for the licensure requirements in the state. So to get the 08 license, that's the business manager license.
So again, WASBO and WASB, there's 8 or 9 or 10 session webinars that they have out there. They're currently available. They're totally free. You can just go out there and pull them up and look at them. It's like a webinar thing. They're not really very long, but they cover the highlights of some of the requirements that you should be looking for in terms of school board or school financing, if you will, and budgets, things like that. So it's available, and we can send out the link, or I'll send it to Tammy. But it's out there and available if any of you want to learn more about budgeting and school finance and all that fun stuff with it. So, and again, concerns around the state with a lot of school districts that may be getting into financial troubles as it relates to either their budgeting process or not passing referendums, and the fact that they're facing some challenges with that. And it's, yeah, I think now this spring there's going to be a lot more referendum items out there too. So I think that's it.
Thank you, Larry. Mike, any legislature updates?
Well, we have our SWSA meeting tomorrow morning. So been working with them. There have been some recent bills that are getting some hearings that are out there. There's one on requiring cursive writing. There's another that's been proposed that would require school districts to spend 70%, to document that they've spent 70% of their budget, specifically on the classroom. It also would have limitations on administrative raises that's out there. So there's a couple of other bills. There's a number of them that would kind of fly in the face very much of local control.
Mike, what did you say about raises?
There's a bill right now that it would accomplish a couple of things that's been proposed. I don't think it's gonna go anywhere, but, it would put in a requirement that 70% of a district's budget, you'd have to document that it's being spent on the classroom. What exactly that means is hard to define, and then it also would place limitations on the ability to give administrators raises. That was another one. Do you remember there's a couple of others that were out there? At any rate, but there are several of them that kind of raise concerns about local control decisions that typically you'd want to see left up to school boards. But in addition to that, I'm going to be this week emailing Senator Hutton and Representative Nalen to get on their calendar so that we can get them in here so we can meet with them. But the big thing is the governor's budget is coming out
Next week.
next week. Yeah, so we'll see what the governor's budget proposal is. We've seen DPIs, the governors will come out, and then the finance committee and the legislature will go to work on what they're gonna put together, and that'll include their kind of hearings around the state. So those are the things that are all coming soon.
All right. Tammy, any comments from citizens?
I've received no comments from citizens.
All right, thank you. Then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.